I left my family's mansion with exactly one $100 bill in my pocket and not a single goodbye. No one ran after me, no voice called me back. Only the sound of the iron gate closing behind me, heavy and cold like a death sentence handed down to the different daughter. I was just 23 years old, a top graduate in biotech engineering from MIT, and deemed a disgrace to the family. In the Clark household, one of the most prestigious and wealthy names in Greenwich, daughters were only allowed to become refined businesswomen, not scientists in lab coats stuck inside a lab all day. I had committed a crime by refusing to follow in the footsteps of my mother and sister in finance, and that crime was tried. Right in the 12-meter-wide Grand Hall, beneath an Italian crystal chandelier. My father delivered the verdict. Take it. That's all a stubborn girl like you deserves. He threw the $100 bill on the floor like it was a used napkin. I watched it spin slowly in the air, before landing softly, but shamefully, on the Persian rug beneath me. A few steps away stood my mother, Eleanor Clark, the woman who appeared in every business headline as the Queen of Wall Street Investments. She stood motionless by the spiral staircase, holding a glass of white wine, looking at me like I was a defective product. "Amelia, don't make things harder than they are," she said, lips barely curled. "If you come back and accept a job at the corporation, I can talk to the board. There's still a seat in the investment strategy division for you. It's not too late." I laughed, a dry, bitter laugh. Throughout my 4 years at college, she had never visited, never asked what I was researching. To her, my degree mattered less than one shareholders' meeting. "I'll need a seat. I'll build my own table." My father's face turned red. It was the color I had feared most as a child, the color that signaled the storm was coming. "Then get out," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Get out of this house. You're no longer a Clark." Outside, the snow had begun to fall. The first flakes of the season drifted silently past the tall glass windows, beautiful, like a slow-motion film. But none of it touched me. In that vast house, I only felt an icy emptiness. And I knew I had to go. I bent down and picked up the $100 bill. It was perfectly folded, clearly prepared for this dramatic expulsion. A faint crease ran down the middle of the bill, like the tear in my trust. "Keep your legacy," I said, voice tight. "I'll build something, not to be better than you, but to make sure I never become like you." My father let out a laugh, mocking and hollow like the wine cellar he always bragged about when entertaining guests. "What are you going to build, Amelia? A lab out of cardboard? A fantasy on that hard diluted head of yours?" I didn't answer. I just clenched the bill tighter and turned away. The small suitcase in my hand felt unbearably heavy, not because of the weight, but because it carried everything I had. A few plain outfits, an old laptop, and the half-finished blueprint of a biosagety technology I believed could change the world. I had no car. The Lexus I used to drive was in my father's name. I had no apartment. The rental in Cambridge had been paid with my mother's credit card, and that was surely cancelled. I had no friends in finance, because I never belonged there to begin with. But I had something my family would never understand, a crazy belief that science could offer something greater than money, a kind of value that couldn't be inherited, only created. I left the Clark mansion just after dusk, snow falling heavier by the minute. The tall black gate slammed shut behind me, like the closing of an old chapter. I turned and looked back at the house, where I had grown up, where I had been taught that a person's worth was measured in stock shares, market indexes, and reputation in the financial world. I believed that until I was 19 and saw a child saved by a device I had designed for a class project. That's when I knew I wasn't going to become the kind of clerk they wanted. I was going to be me, Amelia, and this $100 bill would be the first thing I transformed. I arrived in San Jose at midnight after a 13-hour bus ride from New York. The fare was $37, leaving me with $63 and some loose change. In my coat pocket was the crumpled bill my father had thrown to the floor. I kept it as a silent vow. I'll never return empty-handed. No contacts. No housing. No one waiting. I dragged my small suitcase out of the terminal. Dust clung to my shoes. The wind stung my face. It was nothing like the glittering image people paint of Silicon Valley. Just dim yellow lights, quiet streets, and park benches crowded with the homeless. I picked a bench near bus stop 8, laid down my jacket, and told myself, just one night, tomorrow will be different. But deep down, I knew. There are no miracles for someone rejected by their family. Without even enough money for a motel. The next morning I walked into a small coffee shop called Sunbeam Brew, just looking for warmth and Wi-Fi. It was cheaper than Starbucks and had outlets. Enough reason to order the cheapest Americano and stay the entire morning. That's when I met Leah. She was the barista, around my age, messy teal hair in a bun, faded t-shirt, arms covered in tattoos. She looked up the first time I rolled in my suitcase, but didn't say anything. The third time I asked for hot water, she raised an eyebrow. You sleeping on the street? I froze, caught off guard. I can tell, she continued, wiping down the counter. Been there myself, no need to lie. I exhaled, finally letting go of the strong facade I'd worn since leaving home. Just temporary, I need a few days to get settled. Leah gave me a long look, then nodded and motioned for me to follow her. Behind the counter was a door to the storage room. Narrow. Dark. Thick with the smell of roasted beans. No bed, just wooden floors and some cardboard boxes, but at least no one's kicking you out at midnight. I stood still, stunned. Why trust me? She shrugged. Because you look like me at 21, and because you're hugging that old Dell laptop like it's your lifeline, people only do that when there's something important inside. I laughed, for the first time in days, a tired but genuine laugh. That night I slept in the supply room, surrounded by paper cups, coffee bags and cans of condensed milk. The hum of the grinder upstairs played like a strange soundtrack to my new life, but at least I wasn't curled up in the freezing cold anymore. In exchange for the space, I helped Leah fix the espresso machine the next morning. It kept glitching. Hot water sometimes flowed, sometimes didn't. I opened it up, checked the circuit board, and found the issue. A faulty pressure sensor. Something I could fix in 15 minutes, easier than making instant noodles. The owner, Jerry, walked in just as the machine started working properly for the first time in weeks. He looked at me, surprised and impressed. What did you study? Biotech engineering. Are you looking for a job? I nodded. I can put you on the night shift. Cleaning, organizing storage, sometimes helping at the bar. It's not much, but enough for food. I nearly cried. From that day on, I officially worked at Sunbeam Brew, helping clean during the day and sleeping in the storage room at night. Whenever I had free time, I sat in the back corner of the cafe, opened my laptop, and began rewriting the ideas I'd carried since college. A bioenergy storage device. Feasible, clean, and more efficient than traditional lithium batteries. Leah often sat next to me after her shift, bringing 2 muffins and a pile of curious questions. Is this a bacterial tube or a capacitor? No. It's a modified protein structure. It stores electricity by changing shape in response to enzymes. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but what are you gonna do with it? I paused, looking at Leah. Her eyes didn't mock me like so many others had. I'm going to create something the energy industry has never seen. Leah burst out laughing. Sounds like one of those weirdos on TED Talks. I laughed with her. Yeah, but those weirdos changed the world. I lived like that for 3 months. Mornings at the cafe, afternoons learning new tech through free Wi-Fi, evenings sitting with Leah explaining biochemical energy structures using plastic cups. I gradually completed the first draft of my bioenergy storage system, called Helix Core. I didn't know where it would take me, but I was sure of one thing. My father was right about only one thing. Money can measure a person's value, if that person knows how to use it to create what no one else dares to believe is possible. I stared at the computer screen for 5 straight minutes without blinking. That PDF file, the title Wedding Expenses for Mia and Ryan, pierced straight through my chest like a dagger. $35,863.00. Every line item listed down to the penny. Wedding flowers, $1,200, 0 cents. Cake, $650, 0 cents. Extra chairs for my dad's relatives, $248, 0 cents. I read to the bottom, my hand beginning to tremble. Please pay at your earliest convenience. Your parents hope you handle this quickly. No thank you. No well wishes. Just an order. Cold. Precise. My heart twisted like I'd just been cast out from the family I thought had finally started to open their arms. Ryan stood behind me, his shoulders tensing as he read over the email. He turned to me, voice low, every word tight through his teeth. What the hell is this, Mia? I didn't answer. How could I? I was still asking myself the same thing. I remembered my mom holding my hands, her voice gentle. I just don't want you to ever feel like you're lacking again. This wedding is our gift to you. That sentence now felt like a cruel joke. A con. A trap I had walked into blindly. I didn't sleep that night. I paced back and forth, checked the email again, dug through every message my mother had sent before. Not one line said it was an advance or something I'd have to repay. Not a single word. I remembered my father's cheerful voice at the engagement party, his hand on Ryan's shoulder. We're so proud of her. Finally, a good man to take her home. Every compliment, every hug, now just hollow shells. The truth was plain, brutal, undeniable. They never intended it as a gift. They were investing and expecting a return. The next morning, Ryan found me in the kitchen. I can write this check right now, not because I want to, but because you need this pain to stop. I looked at him, my eyes red. I don't want their money. I don't want a wedding gift snatched back like a slap in the face. But I do want an answer. I want to be seen as their daughter, not as a balance due. Ryan held me, tightly, as if trying to keep together the pieces my family had just shattered. That night, I sat down to write a letter. I couldn't face them directly. I knew if I did, I'd scream. I'd break into pieces, and then the cycle would repeat. I'd be hurt, they'd blame me, and I'd be the one apologizing again. In the letter I wrote, Dear Mom and Dad, I received the invoice. And I don't understand. You offered to pay for the wedding, you said it was a gift, a sign of love. I never asked, I never hinted, I believed you. For the first time in years I truly thought, maybe I was finally someone you could love. Without conditions. But this invoice, it tells me I was just a transaction. I'm not angry about the money. I'm angry about the betrayal. And it hurt because once again, I'm reminded, I'm not Alyssa. I folded the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and included a check covering the full $35,863, 0 cents. Before sending it, I added one last line. Hand trembling but firm. This will be the last financial interaction between us. From now on, I will not receive, nor need, anything from you. Including inheritance. The day I dropped that envelope into the mailbox, the sky was gray and the wind sliced like ice. But I didn't shiver. I felt relief. Sadness. Yes. But in that cold, for the first time, I felt like I was reclaiming my own life. 3 days passed, no reply, no message, no call, no explanation. Silence. Just like the way they always punished me for stepping out of line. The only difference was, this time, I didn't feel guilty. I thought of Elisa. The way her eyes sparkled when she received the keys to the beach house. The way Mom handed her the diamond-studded ring and said, You deserve this. I used to dream of hearing those words once. But not anymore. I don't need someone to say I deserve it. I know I do. That night, Ryan came home with 2 cups of mint ice cream, my favorite since I was a kid, though my mom always said, that flavor's not classy. I laughed while eating, tears falling without me even noticing. Not from pain, but because I finally knew who truly chose to stay. I called my design Helix Core, a bioenergy storage system based on a double helix structure modeled after DNA. The idea had taken root in my sophomore year during a cell technology class, when our professor lectured on how proteins change shape to carry information. I had asked myself, if a molecule can store information, why can't it store energy? It sounded crazy. And honestly, most professors I pitched it to said it was impossible under current conditions. One even mocked me. You should write sci-fi novels, not an engineering thesis. But I didn't stop. I knew I was touching something that could change the entire renewable energy industry. Every night after my shift at Sunbeam Brew, I sat in the back corner using the cafe's Wi-Fi to dig through materials. Hundreds of papers on electroenzymes, nanomaterials, and molecular design. I sketched diagrams in pencil because my laptop battery couldn't last the night. Those pages, now full of scribbles, arrows, and equations, were the beginning of something that just might change the world. 3 months later, an opportunity arrived, random and wild like everything else in my life. That day, Leah called me over to the counter and pointed at a man near the door, furiously typing on his laptop, frustration all over his face. That guy's Jason Kim, CEO of some medical device startup. Last night, I heard him complaining about losing a major contract because their batteries suck. I hesitated. I had never pitched Helix Core to anyone but Leah. But then I remembered that crumpled $100 bill. And I walked over. Excuse me, I heard you're having an energy issue with your biotech device? Jason looked up, frowning. Who are you? Amelia Clark. I'm not a business expert, but I have a biobattery design that might help. He gave me a skeptical, almost condescending stare, then scoffed. You think you've invented a nuclear reactor or something? I didn't react. I just pulled out a stack of diagrams from my backpack. Everything I had. And slid it across the table. I don't need you to believe me, I just need you to read. He read in complete silence for almost 10 minutes. When he looked up again, Jason's eyes were completely different. If this is real, it could change the entire game. I nodded. I know. 3 days later, Jason introduced me to Dr. Vivian Patel, a leading biotech researcher at Stanford University. She had led dozens of major projects and was notorious for her ruthless bluntness. The meeting was held in a cold lab, filled with the scent of ethanol and microscopes. I have 1 hour, she said. And if this design is garbage, you'll know immediately. I presented everything, from the principles of the helix core structure to the enzyme-based charge transfer mechanism. She kept interrupting, challenging, rebutting, pushing my logic to the edge. Just as I began to panic, she suddenly went quiet. Half a minute passed. Then she gave a small nod. Bold. Impractical. But there's potential. I held my breath. I know some people at Berkeley. They might let you borrow lab equipment to test a prototype. But be warned, if a single parameter is off, the whole thing collapses. I accept. You're insane, she said, giving me one last look. But sometimes, insane is the only thing big enough to change an industry. The following week, I started working at Berkeley's Molecular Energy Research Center, unofficially sponsored through Dr. Patel's connections. They didn't pay me a dime, but I got access to the lab at night, 8:00 p.m. to 3:00 a.m. After the main projects cleared out. During the day I still worked at Sunbeam Brew. In the afternoons I fixed equipment for Jason's startup to make just enough to survive. At night, I put on a white lab coat, hands stained with chemicals, stepping into the lab like a dream chaser. For 8 weeks straight, I failed. Protein samples denatured, enzymes died under high temperatures, conductive membranes underperformed. Every night, I stared at flawed data, feeling like I was falling into a black hole. What are you trying to prove, Amelia? I muttered to myself one night, as test model 47 burned out under the electrode. But I didn't give up. Because I remembered what my father once said. You'll never finish anything. And I was going to prove him wrong. On day 59, at 2:47 a.m., test model Helix Core V3.912 unexpectedly registered an energy transfer efficiency of 97.8%. I couldn't believe my eyes. I triple-checked. Same result. 97.8%. I cried right there at the freezing lab bench. Not from joy but because, for the first time in my life, something no one believed was finally becoming real. The next morning, Dr. Patel walked in to find me passed out at the table, pen still in hand. She said nothing. Just flipped to the final data sheet and stared at the chart. After a few minutes, she said only one thing. We need to present this to the National Energy Integration Council. I looked up, eyes tired but glowing. So, it's good enough? She didn't answer, just turned to leave and added. No, Amelia, it's not just good. It could be the future. When the Helix Core prototype reached 98.7% storage efficiency, the entire Berkeley lab held its breath. That number shattered every current tech benchmark. While lithium-ion batteries topped out at 85 to 90%, mine was approaching maximum theoretical performance. This wasn't just a breakthrough. It was a punch in the face to everyone who once laughed at the idea of bioenergy. Dr. Vivian Patel personally validated the test results. She submitted reports to 2 leading research institutions. A week later, I received emails from 3 tech investment funds, all requesting an urgent meeting. Leah, the one who had watched every draft from day one, shoved a new gray blazer into my hands, freshly bought from a thrift shop. No one's going to fund you in an ink-stained t-shirt and busted sneakers, genius. I laughed. You know I hate those formal pitch meetings. I know. But they don't invest in dreamers. They invest in people who make dreams look like plans. And just like that, I stepped into the biggest pitch of my life. The first meeting was with Vanguard Axis, a startup fund in San Francisco. The conference room overlooked the bay, with a polished walnut table and 6 men in wrinkle-free Armani suits. I laid out the full Helix Core process, the test results, a 3-year plan, and the exploding renewable energy market. At the end, one of them asked, "Why should we trust a young engineer with no PhD and no experience running a company?" I answered directly. Because I didn't build anything on assumptions. I started from zero, no money, no backing, and still brought this idea to the verge of prototyping. I don't need you to believe in me. I just need you not to miss the one chance to stand beside a revolution. They smiled, polite, but they never called back. The second meeting was with Stormline Ventures, and the reaction was identical. Admiration for the tech but fear of risk. They offered $500,000, 0 cents, for 40% equity. Practically an insult. I declined. Leah screamed when I told her. Amelia, $500,000, 0 cents is more than everything I've ever owned in my life. I'm not trading the entire future just to scrape by for a few months. You're insane. I laughed and exhaled. I know. The final opportunity came from Orion Matrix Capital, a venture fund based in Palo Alto, specializing in breakthrough technology. The meeting took place in a minimalist conference room, just 3 people present. Seated in the middle was Isabella Cruz, senior partner at The Woman, who had led 3 startups to unicorn status in 5 years. "I've reviewed your data, Amelia," she said after my pitch. "Impressive. Almost too good to be true." "It's real." "I believe that. But I need to know something else. You're a brilliant scientist, but can you handle the pressure when this company grows, when all eyes are on you, when money, politics, and media tear at your dream?" I looked her straight in the eye. "I've slept in a cafe storage room, lived off leftover muffins, fixed espresso machines in exchange for a place to stay. I can handle the entire world if it stands between me and Helix Core." The room went dead silent. Then, Isabella nodded. "I believe you." Orion Matrix will invest $5 million, 0 cents for 22% equity, on the condition that you assemble a tech team within 60 days and deliver a commercial prototype plan in 12 months. I froze. My heart pounded. I accept. 2 weeks later, I founded my own company, named Helix Core Systems. Our first office was a renovated warehouse on the outskirts of Fremont, smelling like fresh paint, with wires hanging like spiderwebs. I hired 4 engineers, 2 former Tesla employees, 1 from the Berkeley lab, and 1 was Leah. "I don't have an engineering degree," she said when I offered. "I don't need a degree. I need the person who asked the right questions, when I didn't know I was wrong." She agreed, but made me promise a raise after the first month, or she'd dump coffee on my head every morning. We worked like maniacs, no weekends, no evenings, no concept of work hours. Helix Core slowly moved from sketches into reality. I looked at the first prototype, just slightly larger than a soda can. But inside it held thousands of hours of labor, thousands of rejections, and the whispered promise I made to myself every night. Don't give up. Just one more step. 1 month after the contract signing, I received a letter. No return address. Just a plain white envelope with an old $100 0-cent bill inside. The same one my father had thrown in my face years ago. Attached was a single sheet of paper with 2 printed lines. Amelia Clark, CEO, Helix Core Systems. Looks like you figured out how to use it better than your father. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I simply folded the note and placed it in the top drawer of my desk. I didn't need an apology, I needed results. And the results? They were coming faster than I had imagined. 3 years after I walked into the Orion Matrix conference room wearing a rented blazer and a dream that was mocked, Helix Core Systems launched its first commercial product. Helix Core V1. A bio-battery system capable of storing energy with 99.1% efficiency. The shockwave through the energy industry was seismic. The press called it the quantum leap of the 21st century. Renewable energy firms from Europe, South Korea, and South America lined up to sign distribution deals. Fossil fuel giants started to panic, literally. For the first time in modern history, a clean energy storage system had not only matched, but vastly outperformed, traditional fuels in both efficiency and cost. The public demo took place in an industrial site in Arizona, where extreme heat typically crippled traditional systems in continuous operation. I stood before a sleek row of silver Helix Core batteries, hand-gripping the remote. My eyes were fixed on the energy sensor screen. The numbers shot up as the system activated. 99.1%. No fluctuation. No loss. The audience, government officials, energy execs, and international press, rose to their feet in unison, a wave of cheers like a stadium eruption. "She did it!" a CNBC reporter exclaimed. "She just rewrote the rulebook." I turned to Leah, now our chief operating officer. Her hair was still deep green, but now tied up in a high bun like a proper CEO. She whispered, eyes filled with emotion. "I told you you weren't normal." I smiled, eyes stinging. "And this world, Leah, it's finally learning how to keep up with abnormal." 3 months after that demo, Helix Core Systems went public on the NASDAQ. Stock symbol HCS. Shares tripled within 72 hours. The media dubbed me the female Elon Musk. I hated the label, but I got the message. A rebel in a stale industry. The day the company's valuation passed $8 billion, $200 million, 0 cents, I received an email from Orion Matrix. "Congratulations, Amelia. From the girl who used to sleep in a cafe storage room, to a CEO with a personal net worth over $110 million, 0 cents. We're proud we believed in you from the beginning. Isabella Cruz." I didn't reply right away. I just printed the email, folded it neatly and pinned it beside the old $100 0 cents bill. The one I kept from the day my father threw it at me. 2 symbols, one of humiliation, one of recognition. Both were fuel for my journey. The new Helix Core headquarters was built in San Mateo, a 6-story glass tower, eco-friendly, powered entirely by our own technology. I had my own office for the first time in my life, but my favorite spot was still the lowest floor, the research lab. There, I still wore my lab coat, still fine-tuned equipment with young engineers, still debated protein chains, electrobiochemical structures, and dual enzyme mechanisms. I had never left science, I just brought it to a higher floor. One late night as I reviewed a market analysis report, Leah walked in holding her tablet. "There's something you need to see." She set it down on the desk. On screen was a leaked internal memo from Clark Holdings, the top financial investment group in New York. "My family." The headline read, "Strategic Plan to Acquire Controlling Interest in Helix Core Systems. Phase 1. My heart sank. They were coming back. Not to apologize, not to ask how I was, but to take over what I had built. From the very pain they left behind. "I saw this coming," I said, my voice low. "What are you going to do?" I looked out the window. The San Mateo sky full of stars, reflecting on the Helix Core building's glass like its own private universe. "I'm not the girl who was thrown out of her house anymore, Leah. I'm the CEO of a company that's changing the world, and this time, I won't let them destroy what I've built." Leah nodded. Her eyes were no longer those of a barista from a small coffee shop, but a comrade. "Good, because I just got word. Clark Holdings is negotiating with 3 of our major minority shareholders. If they gather 30%, they'll have the right to propose a restructuring." I gave a cold smile. Then they've picked the wrong person to play this game. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. "Begin the intellectual property protection plan, call legal counsel. And send out board meeting invitations. I want them to know who really holds the power." It took me nearly a year to prepare the acquisition strategy for Clark Holdings. Step by step, silently, without anyone linking me to the name Amelia Clark. I was no longer the girl cast out with a $100 0-cents bill in her pocket. I was now Elena Brooks. The name I used for all transaction records tied to Northgate Nova Capital, a subsidiary of Helix Core Systems, incorporated in Delaware, with multi-layered ownership structure to perfectly shield the identity of its principal shareholder. When my family began secretly collecting Helix Core shares to initiate a takeover, they had no idea I had already moved first and was doing the same to their own investment empire. Clark Holdings was a financial beast, with over 80 years of history, specializing in conservative sectors, luxury real estate, banking, traditional energy. When they tried to break into renewable energy, their rigidity became their fatal flaw. One I understood better than anyone. Through 3 indirect investment companies in Switzerland, Singapore, and Nevada, my legal team and I quietly bought up small chunks of Clark Holdings, acquiring stakes from dormant funds, retired shareholders, and investors hit hard by last year's market crash. In just 9 months, we quietly acquired 31% of the shares, and thanks to holding a large portion of Clark's maturing corporate bonds, I had the upper hand. I didn't need to knock with my old name. I'd break the door down with the power of capital. The emergency shareholder meeting took place at Clark's New York headquarters. I arrived on time, in a simple black dress, hair in a tight bun, gold-rimmed glasses. No one recognized me. Because no one ever imagined Amelia Clark, the daughter once labeled a stain on the family name, would return like this. When I entered the boardroom, all eyes turned to Douglas Clark. My father, chairman of the board. He sat at the head. Hair grayer than before, voice still sharp as ever. "I declare this meeting open. Will the representative of Northgate Nova Capital please identify themselves?" I stood. "I'm Elena Brooks, CEO of Northgate Nova Capital." He frowned. The name meant nothing to him. "Good." I opened my folder, speaking clearly. Under regulations, any shareholder holding over 30% of equity and more than 50% of outstanding bonds has the right to motion for executive restructuring. Northgate Nova Capital currently holds 31.4% of shares and 54% of Clark Holdings bonds. We are requesting a vote to remove the current chairman and restructure the board. Silence fell over the room. The first to stand in protest was Gwen Harper, my sister, currently the executive director of international investments. This is insane. Who do you think you are walking in here to topple the board? I met her eyes, voice unwavering. I'm the one they threw out of the family. And today, I'm here to take back what never rightfully belonged to them. Gwen squinted as if trying to match my face to a distant memory. Amelia. My father snapped around, voice like a hiss through clenched teeth. No, it can't be. I removed my glasses, took off my coat. His eyes met mine. And it hit him like a punch. Hello, Dad, long time no see. The air shattered like glass. A few shareholders murmured, some nodded subtly. They had heard rumors about the young woman who once rejected a massive inheritance, who built a bio-battery company from nothing. But never imagined she'd appear here, with power and composure like this. Douglas Clark stood, trembling. You came back. For revenge? I stepped to the table and laid down copies of share transfer documents, bond contracts, and the restructuring plan. No. I came back to buy what you thought you'd never lose, but now, it's no longer yours. Clark Holdings is my life's work, he shouted. And I was what you threw away like trash, I replied. Now that trash has built a kingdom big enough to swallow the Clark name whole. And I will. Not out of revenge, but for justice. Gwen lunged toward the documents. Leah, who had stood silently at my side, stepped in, eyes like ice. Don't be stupid, this isn't a family issue anymore, this is a shareholder matter and you have lost. I stood in the center of Clark Holdings' boardroom. I no longer needed to brace myself. No more pretending. No more bottling rage. I stared at the man who once called me a disgrace to the bloodline, Douglas Clark, current chairman, my biological father. I don't just represent Northgate Nova Capital, I said, my voice sharp as steel forged from years of scorn. I also represent 45.3% of existing equity, and the majority of outstanding bond debt Clark Holdings relies on to stay afloat. A ripple of whispers spread through the room. Douglas clenched his fists, his jaw twitching as he fought to maintain the last shred of authority. You're threatening me? He rasped, shaking. This company, it's my life's work, my father's, our legacy. I couldn't hold back a laugh. That thing you call a legacy? I leaned forward, hand flat on the table. It's a bloated investment firm running on decayed connections and archaic thinking, a company that squeezes everything it can speculate on but refuses to invest in any future, not shaped by your generation. I straightened. No. That's not a legacy, that's blindness. And today it ends. He stepped back, face pale. Gwen stood behind him, silent, defeated. I placed the folder on the table. White paper. Blue ink. Corporate law doesn't need a blade to end a dynasty. I hereby motion for the immediate resignation of Mr. Douglas Clark as chairman of the board. I enunciated every word. Clark Holdings will be merged into the Helix Core ecosystem, becoming a subsidiary under our renewable energy investment arm. The Clark name will be removed from signage and all operational strategy. An elderly shareholder at the head of the table cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Amelia, this is a bit excessive, maybe we could revisit the discussion. I cut him off without turning. I've spent my whole life being ignored in discussions like this. This time, I'm not speaking to be heard. I'm speaking to announce. My father gripped the table, his hands trembling. You can't do this. I turned to him, my eyes no longer pained, only resolute. You once said money is the only thing that measures a person's worth. I raised the financial report and tossed it onto the table. Then take a look, Dad. My personal net worth has surpassed $120 million, 0 cents. My subsidiary stock dominates nearly half the clean energy market in California. And you? You're using my money to roll over the debt of a company I just swallowed whole." He looked at me, eyes no longer furious, but hopeless. I slowly walked toward the door, then paused. I didn't come back for apologies or acceptance. I turned around and looked at each face that had once looked past me. I came back to prove that what you threw away can become something big enough to swallow the very system you built. Gwen blurted out. "You'd destroy everything, just because of an old wound?" I looked at her calmly. "No, I'll rebuild from the ashes so that kids like me never have to choose between ideals and bloodline." After the meeting, my lawyer handled all the formal procedures. I instructed that everything be handled quietly. No media scandal. Not because I was afraid. Because I didn't need a cheering crowd to validate my victory. I only needed to see my father sign the resignation letter, his hand shaking, the ink smudging the final signature. I didn't speak. I didn't smile. I wasn't angry. I simply bowed my head and walked out of the room where he once declared, "Amelia will never amount to anything without the Clark name." Now, it was those with the Clark name who had to leave. That afternoon, I returned to Helix Core Systems headquarters. Leah was waiting, holding a small wooden box. This came from Douglas Clark's private address. I opened it. Inside was a vintage Montblanc fountain pen, engraved with my name, Amelia R. Clark. At the bottom of the box was a note. "You did what I never dared to consider. If I had chosen differently back then, maybe Clark Holdings would have become Helix Core. I'm sorry, in the only way I know how." Dad. I didn't know how long I stood there. All I knew was that for the first time in many years, I felt lighter. Not because he changed, but because I no longer needed his validation to know I was worthy. After taking over Clark Holdings, I dismantled every outdated department, cut nearly half of the investments in fossil fuels, luxury real estate, and get-rich-quick fantasy funds. In their place, I built a new fund, Clark Green Capital, dedicated to supporting clean energy startups, biotech, and environmental solutions for urbanization. Some would say I revamped an entire empire out of spite. But the truth is, I saved it from the generational arrogance it once thrived on. I didn't keep the Clark name on the sign, but I did retain parts of the old team. Those who had real talent, the ones ignored by the system because they didn't fit the upper-class mold. 1 year after the takeover, Clark Holdings was no longer a symbol of outdated elitism. It became an extension of Helix Core Systems, bringing tech-driven thinking into finance with speed, transparency, and a spirit of innovation. Financial news outlets called me the architect of a new investment generation. I didn't care about the title. I only felt at peace, knowing that kids like me would no longer be seen as failures, just for daring to be different. My father lived quietly after stepping down. He no longer appeared in the media. No statements to the press. He moved back to the old estate in northern New Jersey, hired a gardener, and adopted 2 huskies. The same breed he once banned me from keeping because they were messy. We didn't speak for nearly a year. No calls. No emails. Just 2 people, walking forward, parallel, but never colliding. My mother was different. She called, sent flowers, letters, tried to reconnect through hollow words and half-hearted guilt. I didn't respond. I wasn't angry. But there was no place left for her in my life. I used to be silent out of fear. Now, I'm silent because I know silence can be a boundary too. One morning in April, I arrived at the office like any other day and saw Leah at the front desk, holding a small parcel. "What's the surprise today?" I asked, removing my sunglasses. She held out the box. No return address, but the signature on the delivery log says, Douglas Clark. My heart skipped a beat. I took the box to my office and closed the door. Inside was a small cream-colored envelope. No address. Just a single black ink line. "To my daughter, from where it all began." I opened it. A folded bill lay inside. The same $100.00 bill. The one he once threw at my feet, as if discarding a dream. It had been laminated, still bearing the fold line, the mark from that day. Alongside was a handwritten note, short, but heavy as a lifetime of silence. You were right. I never understood a person's true value until I saw you rewrite your own destiny. I'm sorry, not to be forgiven, just so you know. I saw it. I sat still for a long time, no tears. No bitterness. Just a long overdue acceptance, and the ending I needed. That day, I left the office early. Told no one. Took nothing with me except the laminated bill. I drove to San Jose, to the same coffee shop where I once begged to sleep in the storage room, where I messed up espressos just to stay, where I quietly redrew Helix core battery schematics using free Wi-Fi. Sunbeam Brew was still there, same name, still had the chalkboard sign. Today's special, courage and caffeine. I sat at the same old table by the window. The new barista brought me a latte, unaware that this very place had quietly fermented a revolution. I placed the $100.00 bill on the table, along with a short note. I was kicked out of my home with this exact bill. It brought me here. If you are starting over, maybe it'll take you even farther. I walked away, never looked back. That night, I stood on the rooftop of Helix Core HQ in San Mateo. The city lights shimmered with the breeze. Leah joined me, holding 2 glasses of red wine. You okay? She asked. I nodded, clinking glasses with her. I've closed the loop, now it's just forward. Leah laughed softly. From coffee storage to the NASDAQ, who would have thought, Amelia? I looked toward the horizon. No one, not even me. But in the end, what defines a person isn't where they were born. It's where they choose to end the old and begin something better. Amelia Clark's story isn't just a journey from rejection to power. It's proof of what resilience and self-determination can build. From a $100.00 bill tossed with cruelty, she didn't just rise. She transformed pain into the foundation of a revolutionary empire. Her story reminds us, a person's worth isn't where they come from, it's what they dare to create from nothing. What do you think about Amelia's journey, and how she faced the family that once abandoned her? Would you have done the same in her place? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and follow the channel for more powerful family stories like this one.